Welcome to Lesson 7-4. This is The Walking Club, 4th grade, page 238. The Hillside Elementary School Walking Club meets every Monday after school. The table below shows how far some students walked at their last meeting. And you can see from our table we're working with Katie, Mapara, Nikhil, Cole, Maria, and Jack today. And we're going to dive right in and take a look at Katie's walking distance. So number 1 states that Katie walks the same distance at every meeting. Find out how far she'll walk after 2 meetings. So they want us to draw a picture of what's going on here. We'll need to look at the table, find Katie, and she happens to be the first name in the table. And it tells us that she walked 2/3 of a mile for walking club after school each day. So we're going to try to figure out, after 2 meetings, how far has she walked? And a picture, you should know me by now. I'm a big fan of using circles as my pictures here. So the denominator tells me our fraction will be split into thirds, which is kind of like the peace sign, remember? Go down to the middle and then split off. And this could be day 1, and then we'll do this for day 2. So we're going to draw a picture of how to figure this problem out, but then we're also going to talk about how to figure it out using multiplication. So first, let's do this one. We say she walked 2/3 of a mile, so that means out of these 3 for day 1, we'll need to color in how many? 2. 2 for 2/3. So there's 1/3. Here is the second third. In the interest of time, I'm doing a pretty poor job shading those in. So here's day 1. Now here's day 2, where she walks the same distance. So it'll be another 2/3. Cool. So really, all you're left to do here, they want to know how much she walked overall after those 2 meetings. You can just count how many thirds you have here. It'll be these 2/3 plus these 2/3. And you might be able to quickly say, oh, there's 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 4/3. 4/3 of a mile. Now, actually, you might be saying 4/3 of a mile. That doesn't make sense. That's more than a mile, because 3/3 would be a mile. So we're going to talk about how to break this down and simplify as well. Now, let's look at B before we simplify. They also wanted a multiplication equation. So they wanted a picture so you can visualize it that way. But now we're going to take a look at how to multiply. And one of the main goals of this lesson will be showing you how to take a fraction and multiply it by a whole number. So in this case, our fraction for Katie's walking distance was 2/3. Excelente. And how many times did she walk 2/3 of a mile? Tells us up here. After 2 meetings. Maybe she did more, maybe there's a 3rd day and so on. But for now, we're working with 2 meetings. So it could be tempting to do this. Just say 2/3 times 2. And that's true. That would be a good way to show, a truthful way to show a multiplication equation using a whole number. But in this case, in 7.3, on page 237, we talked about how to multiply a fraction by a whole number. I just squeezed it into that lesson a little bit. And if you didn't watch it, I will tell you now. My preferred way of multiplying a whole number by a fraction is to turn that whole number into a fraction as well. And this is how you turn a whole number into a fraction. If your whole number is 2, that's what it looks like as a fraction. If your whole number is 7, that's what it looks like as a fraction. If your whole number is 264, then this is what it looks like as a fraction. Do you notice a pattern here? you should notice that turning a whole number into a fraction just means putting it over 1. So 2 becomes 2 over 1. 7 becomes 7 over 1. 264 becomes 264 over 1. And I'm going to show you why this will work to our advantage. First, let's turn 2 into a fraction. And we just put that over 1. And now look what we've done here. Now we have a fraction multiplication problem. And this could just be my own personal opinion, but fraction multiplication is my favorite type of multiplication involving, I should rephrase that. My favorite thing to do with fractions is multiply them. I would rather multiply a fraction than divide it, then subtract it, or add it. Multiplying fractions is literally just going straight across. So that means you're going to do 2 times 2, which equals 4, and 3 times 1, which equals 3. Does that look familiar? It should. It looks a lot like what we have up here. Now, as a last piece, let's talk about reducing the fraction. I will not force you to reduce your fraction. However, other people will. The older you get, the more likely it is that it'll be required for you to reduce your fraction. You'll notice right now we have what's called an improper fraction. The numerator is greater than the denominator. To reduce, we're going to ask ourselves this question. How many times can 3 go into 4 without going over? And this should be a pretty easy one for us. I know 3 can only go into 4 one time before it goes over, because 3 times 1 is 3, but 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 is more than 4. So 3 can only go into 4 one time, and there's going to be something left over, right? 3 times 1 is 3. And how much is left over between 3 and 4? There's 1 piece left over. So to reduce, we would get 1 whole, and then 1 piece of another third left over. Okay? And you can visualize this by looking here, and watch what happens if I were to combine these two into a brand new set here. So I can take these two and plug them here. But I can also take one of these thirds and make a whole. Bring them over. So now I have 1 whole right here. And how much is left over? Just this lonely guy, which would be 1/3. So 1 whole and 1/3. Okay? So I believe that's what you'll be doing for the remainder of 238 and 239. You'll notice, I just want to point this out to you. Drawing a picture works best when your numbers are relatively low. So remember, Katie, we were only drawing a picture for 2 meetings. And you'll look, number 2 is only 4 meetings, which is more drawing, but not terrible. By the time you get to 239, you're not going to be drawing pictures anymore, because with Maria, they're going to want to know an answer after 7 meetings. So they're kind of saving you some trouble. That way you don't have to draw 7 fraction circles and then go through and try to hand count them. What they're slowly doing is easing you into using fraction multiplication. So if I could, just looking at number 3 for a minute, I'll throw this out at you. Maria walks the same distance at every meeting. Find out how far she will walk after 7 meetings. So if you look over at your table, see if you can find Maria real quick before I can. Right here. She walks 4/3 of a mile every meeting. So remember what we're doing for our multiplication equation. We're going to take how far she walks every meeting, which is 4/3 of a mile. And then how many times do we need to do it? How many meetings are we working with? 7. So it's going to be up to you to remember how do we turn a whole number into a fraction? And remember, it's something like this, guys. Okay, so you're going to do 4/3 times the fraction version of 7, and then you're going to just multiply across. I'm going to let you fill in some blanks on that one. All right, so I think that should do it for lesson 7-4. Same old, same old. Any questions, any other problems you want me to walk through, message me, dojo email, comment, and I will do what I can to help you out. All right, guys, I'll see you on 7-5.